Well, good morning, friends, and welcome once again this fine Monday morning, where I am at least. Welcome to Thought for the Day. Well, I wonder if you've worked out who's going to win. What am I speaking about? Well, through the autumn and winter weeks, for a number of years now, many homes have a weekend ritual, and that weekend ritual is Strictly Come Dancing. They tune in on a Saturday evening to watch the competition, a diminishing number of matched couples of professional dancers and celebrities dancing in front of 3 or 4 judges. And then on Sunday evening they take time to tune in to a shorter programme, which is the results programme. The results programme features 2 couples who are at the bottom of the voters list, and they dance off against each other, and the judges make a decision as to which of the 2 couples should continue. Strictly, as it has been reduced to and titled Strictly, colloquially abbreviated, is certainly one of the BBC's mammoth success stories. But why? Well, there is glamour, there is a level of sophistication, there is certainly in dancing terms a great level of skill, there is drama, and there is tension. 2 stories come to mind. Yes, relax, I'm not here today encouraging you to watch Strictly, if that's not your habit. 2 stories come to mind. For an Easter holiday a few years ago, Chris and I went to New York for a long weekend, a kind of Thursday to Tuesday weekend. And that weekend coincided with her birthday, and it also was Easter weekend. We found ourselves on Saturday in Manhattan, and we were wandering up, and we came to Times Square, and there an old theatre had been converted to a church, and the great big banner outside the church said this: Revival on Times Square. So we saw this Saturday afternoon of Easter weekend. We would normally be going to church on Easter morning, and we certainly had every intention of finding a church for that Easter morning in New York, and seeing that big sign made up our minds for us, and we were determined to go to Times Square Church. Well, we anticipated that the start time would be 11 o'clock, and we got there maybe 10:30 or 25 to 11. There were people coming out, there were people going in, and I said to my wife, I says, oh, they must have 2 services. There is one leaving now, finished, and then people are going in for the service we want to go to. Alas, that wasn't the case. It was much better than that. 1 service only at 11 o'clock. Those going in were going in to enjoy the service. Those coming out were people who had arrived earlier and couldn't get a seat. And from the time at 25 to 11 or 20 to 11 we got into the foyer, it took us until well after 11 o'clock to get from the very rear of the foyer into the sanctuary itself, and to this day we didn't get a seat, but not to worry about that. What I'm coming to is this: the church was filled, apparently someone said afterwards, normally about 4,000 people. There were 2 choirs, a junior and a senior, and they obviously took part during the service. And the senior one in particular, there were quite a number of Afro-American ladies, and they were wearing these bright dresses and costumes with the great turban-style hats. And what I'm coming to is this: I shall never forget it. Could these choirs and could the congregation around them, could they sing? Boy, they could sing. And could they dance? They could dance. As they stood, their bodies moved. Those who were close to the aisles moved into the aisles, and throughout the sung worship, music, singing, and dancing was wonderful, liberating, captivating, and unforgettable. That's one story to date I haven't forgotten, and I don't think I ever will. The second story is a different story. It's a biblical story. It comes from an Old Testament book, 2 Samuel, and chapter 6. And that chapter there tells the story of what's called in the Bible, in the Old Testament, the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, as we listen to it, is a clumsy term that means very little. But it really was a big box. And in the box were precious icons, precious to the nation of Israel. And that box, with its icons inside, really for the nation of Israel, represented the visible, practical, physical presence of God. God didn't live in the box, of course he didn't. But the box itself, commissioned by the priests, the icons inside, this for them was as close as they would get to a visible, physical, tangible idea of the presence of God. And so it was, justly, very precious to them. Well, in one of their skirmishes and warfares, that box, the Ark of the Covenant, had been taken away and stolen by an invading force. The chapter, 2 Samuel chapter 6, is the story about this ark, this box, coming back to its rightful resting place. And as it came back, David, the shepherd boy, the poet, the slayer of Goliath, and now the king of Israel, the Bible says that he worshipped God with such rejoicing and pleasure. He did it with a jig of delight. But his wife, Michal, found his spontaneous, worshipful dance demeaning, and the Bible says of her, she was filled with contempt for her. I wonder if such a thing happened in our church being Dundee Congregational Church. Your church might be another church. If such a thing happened in any of the churches to which we belong, members jigging, swaying, dancing in the aisles, would we be happy, spontaneously delighted, as David was, or would we be contentious and offended? I'm coming to this. Personally, I'm no dancer at all, but I am, thanks be to God, a worshipper. His grace has reached my heart. Through that I have been converted, and I am a worshipper. And what I believe is this, that while we are all different, what is easily natural for some is uncomfortable for others. There is no right way to worship. Therefore, there is no absolutely wrong way to worship. And very certainly, in worship there are times when we need awe, reverence, order, and quietness. But I do think there should also be a place for joyful celebration and an outpouring of praise. My thought for today is this. In worship, it's not important really whether we dance between the pews or in the aisles or not. What is important is that we do gather to worship. And I encourage you, when it's at all possible, either by your own circumstances or the reopening of our churches, I encourage you to gather for worship. And I encourage you too, that your spirit allow it to leap with joy, rejoicing in God's goodness. My thought for the day. God bless you until I have the privilege of speaking to you again.